Awesome. And then all of you will get this recording if you'd like it. So, as Sylvia said, super excited to be with you. Let's go forward here. Am I sharing my screen? I think I am. Carrie, you're the only one I can see. Can you give me a thumbs up if you see my shared screen? Okay. All right. Thank you. Um, by way of quick introduction, Sylvia did an awesome job already, but my name is Tanner Withers. First and foremost, I'm a parent of a child with a rare syndrome, which is why I do this. And this is my little cutie right here. In fact, we adopted this little cutie from Colombia, and it was exactly a year ago today that we hopped on a plane and we set out for Colombia for about a month and a half, and we spent time there and brought her home. So this is kind of a fun day for us, but just super excited to be here. I'm the founder of All Ability Planning, and our focus is to support families specifically with the planning. We want to empower families of all abilities to live their life's potential. And we feel like our contribution to that comes in the form of the financial, the benefits, the estate, and the family support planning. So that's kind of a little bit about what we do here. We love United Angels. I first became acquainted with United Angels a few years back, and this is the most recent event with United Angels, their Walk with Angels event, which is always just a ton of fun, and the first that my adopted daughter, Halsey is her name, was able to attend. And so this was just some fun pictures of us at the latest event. So we're super grateful to United Angels for putting this together and allowing us to share this really important information with families like us. So. All right, let's go ahead. I'll start with the legal part, I guess. This is the fun. Uh, Today, and this is, I love doing these presentations, but it's always hard because I know so many of you have specific questions, right? You're thinking about your lives and you want to make sure this information matches with your life. And so we'll do the best we can. I know that all of you are in different stages and thinking about different things. And so I can't give you advice legally because we're not doing this one-on-one here. And so this is just for educational purposes only. We'll try to be as specific as we possibly can, but we just want to point that out that this is for education only. If you do have specific questions about your situation, feel free to reach out to myself, to Sylvia. We can get you connected with someone that can help. All right, this is what we're talking about today. As Sylvia mentioned, when we were brainstorming ideas of what we could talk about, what we wanted to do is make something actionable. We found that there's just a lot of stuff we have to know and do. And so we really wanted to just say, let's come away with three things that all of us, every single parent or caregiver or whatever role you fill, can do. And so I want to start. I've never done this before. We're going to see if it works. I created a poll. I'm going to launch it. It should show up. All of you, if you will, please complete this little poll of what do you want to learn today? And I know that some of you in the registration process already dropped in some questions. The good news is a lot of the things that you mentioned are things that we are going to go through today. But if you'll just take a couple minutes here and type in, what do you want to learn? What do you hope to get out of our time? And we'll do the best we can to address these questions here. And I'll pause and I'll let you guys do this for a second here. Okay, we'll give it a couple more minutes. Okay, I'm going to keep this open because I think if I click end poll, it'll kick all of you out who are maybe in the midst of typing. So we'll keep this open, and then I think it'll show me the results when we're done here. But let's just keep going. Let's kiss. That's how we're going to start this out. I guess that's our tagline, right? Keep it simple. Again, as we mentioned, that's really what we want to do with this workshop. We want to make it actionable, but in the process of keeping it simple, we want to talk about things that are actually going to change your life. And so between keeping your kids alive and thriving and learning everything you need to know about caring for a child with a disability, there is no blueprint, as all of you know. Implementing the things that we talk about and then staying somewhat sane in the process, it can be super overwhelming, even to the point of nothing getting done. And maybe some of you have felt that way. As parents and caregivers, we often find ourselves shoulding on ourselves, which is a favorite phrase of mine, because we're frustrated by all the things we feel like we should be doing. Let's simplify it. Let's lift where we stand and let's simply take the next best step we possibly can towards bettering our life for ourselves and our dependents. I'm going to end this poll here, and we'll kind of come back to this and make sure that we talk about these specific questions. So thank you for going through and sharing some of the things that you want to learn about. We'll come back to that. I also want to point out here, I think it says it in the next one. Yep. Feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go. We'll pause through every section and make sure that we talk through those questions. And then at the very end, we'll open it up to Q&A as well. But we want to make this actionable. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to teach you in plain English. One of the things I hate is going to a workshop where I don't know anything and I don't even understand what they're saying. And so I'm going to do my best to talk in plain English here to the extent that we possibly can. And if at any time what I'm saying doesn't sound like English anymore, let me know and I'll slow down and stop and make sure that we make sure you understand it. The second part is I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. Again, going back to workshops that I've gone to in the past where I'm trying to learn, I hate where I have to sort of figure out what to do next. And so, yes, you're welcome to interpret this however you'd like, but I'm going to give all of you specific actionable steps that you can take. And the whole purpose of that is we want you to walk away knowing how to improve your life, knowing exactly what to do. And so without having to sort of wade through the waterfall of information that exists here. So here are the three things. Here are the 1, 2, 3. I'm going to outline them and introduce them initially, and then we're going to spend some more time talking about them one through one. The first is getting public benefits. We've always heard about them, government benefits, whatever you want to call them. But if there's only one thing you can do, it's get the benefit. The second step is protect the benefit. It's not enough just to get them, you have to keep them and protect them. And then the third part that we're going to talk about is protecting your child's care. So specifically, the first two are about the benefits, and the last is about the child's care. So the first piece we're going to talk about is getting public benefits. The simplest way I like to think about this is breaking it down into 3 parts: income, insurance, and supports. So I'm going to do another poll here. This last one seemed to work. I'm going to launch it. Here's the question, if you'll please answer. What's your confidence level in your knowledge of SSI versus SSDI? Do you feel like you know the difference between SSI and SSDI? Very confident, somewhat confident, not at all confident. You'll take a minute and type in your thoughts on that. Okay, looks like we've got most people who have answered. Here's what the results are. We've got 18% saying very confident. For those of you who are very confident, awesome. I hope this first part is a refresher. For the 24% of you who said somewhat confident, we're going to make sure that you're very confident. And for those who said not at all confident, which is the majority, my goal is that by the end of this, you will have a very clear understanding of the difference, because this is one of the main questions that I see. So we're going to go ahead and end that poll, and let's go forward with this. This is the first part of getting public benefits, if there's one thing you can possibly do. If you've ever joined one of my workshops before, you've followed me on social media, or you've met with me one-on-one, you will have heard me say this. Disability and special needs planning is taking advantage of all publicly available benefits. ... There's a second part of that phrase, and I'm going to finish that phrase later, but let's just focus on this first part, getting and taking advantage of the publicly available benefits. There are 3, as I mentioned, and this is a simple way to understand what's even available to you. The first part is income. Within an income benefit, there is SSI, which stands for Supplemental Security Income, and SSDI, which stands for Social Security Disability Insurance. This is going to be the main focus of this part of the workshop today. The second benefit is insurance, which is Medicaid and Medicare. You'll see me say this later, but in my opinion, Medicaid is the most important benefit we can possibly get. And so that's the one that we want to make sure we protect the most. And then the last one are going to be the supports. state Medicaid waivers, food stamps, otherwise known as SNAP, and any other programs that are available depending on the state that you live in, okay? These are the three primary benefits. Again, today we're going to focus mostly on the difference between SSI and SSDI and what you need to know about how to understand this for your situation. So let's talk about SSI versus SSDI. A minor note, and this is pun intended. I know that some of you on the call have minor children, okay? The rules for SSI and SSDI are different when the individual with a disability or special needs is a minor, meaning under the age of 18. For SSI, it usually is going to depend on the parent or guardian's income and assets. For SSDI, it's usually going to depend on if the parent is deceased or not. Today, we're going to focus mostly on 18 plus. I do want to drop this link in the bottom. This is such a cool one. This is a really cool little website with Social Security where you can go and figure out if you qualify for SSDI in your family situation, again, specifically if you have minor children. And so I'm going to drop this in the chat here. Let's see, where's that chat? Perfect. I'll drop all of the links as we go so that you can keep them and you can easily access them. But this is how you can go, specifically if you have minor children, to determine if you qualify for SSI, okay? So let's continue on. What is SSI? I'm going to define this at a low level, just so that, again, that we're all on the same page as to what this stuff actually is. Supplemental Security Income, SSI, provides needs-based monthly income payments to eligible adults. Again, I say adults, children can certainly qualify for this, but we're talking about specifically adults in this situation who have little to no income or assets. Now, welfare sounds kind of harsh, but that is technically what this program is. This is a welfare program. Again, the simplest way is it's for people who can't work or don't have enough income or assets. That's what this program is for. It's a very positive thing. In order to qualify for SSI, there are three main parts. The first is you must either be 65 or older, blind, or disabled. Obviously, for purposes of today, we are probably talking mostly about blind and disabled. The second part is you must have income, and when I say you, we're talking about the individual with a disability, must have income less than $1,971 per month. Now, this can vary depending on the state and the circumstance, but in general, that's the number that we're going to use. Less than that. If you make more than that, you're not going to get SSI. And then the last part is an asset limit. You must not have assets more than $2,000. This excludes a primary home, a primary vehicle, and personal property like furniture and collectibles and things like that. Those are not going to count. But anything else, cash, investments, rental properties, those would all count as assets and therefore render you not qualified for SSI. I also want to point out that currently in 2024, the maximum amount that SSI pays is $943 per month. Again, that can change a little bit state to state, but in general, that's the federal limit. If your child is living at home and not working, not receiving an income, and they are not getting $943 per month, it's probably because it hasn't been communicated clearly enough to Social Security that they are charging, or that you as the parent or guardian are charging room and board or fair share. So that's an easy one. If you're not getting 943, call them and let them know, hey, you know, they are paying their way to live here. Those rules are actually changing at the end of the month. You only have to say $334 per month. That's the minimum you have to charge in order for them to get the maximum $943 per month, okay? Let's go on here. Let's talk about what is SSDI. And again, right now we're educating, and then I'll tell you what you need to do. SSDI is Social Security Disability Insurance, and this also provides a monthly income payment to eligible adults like SSI who have a disability that stops or limits someone from working. Unlike SSI, where SSI is just a paid program, a paid welfare program to individuals who don't have enough income or assets, which most of our kiddos with disabilities don't, SSDI is a program that must have been paid into in order to receive the benefit, okay? So this comes directly from payroll tax contributions. In order to qualify for SSDI, there are three parts as well. Number one, you obviously have to be disabled, as the name would imply. Number two, you must have income less than $1,550 per month. Again, this number can vary a little bit, but that's going to be the general number that we're looking at. And then the last part is there's two ways, once you're determined that you are disabled and make less than the 1550, there's two ways you can actually get this. And this is where we're really going to focus our conversation today. The first is if you have worked. If the individual with a disability has worked, specifically 40 plus credits, you get 4 credits per year of full-time work, that would deem them eligible for their own Social Security disability insurance benefit. Now, for a lot of us here, it's not going to happen. And so the second way that someone can get SSDI is under what is called the Disabled Adult Child Benefit, or the DAC benefit. You don't necessarily need to remember that term, but this is what that benefit does. This becomes available when a parent begins taking their own Social Security, SSDI, or passes away. Okay, this is a super important thing to know. The other thing as well is that a DAC benefit, that disabled adult child benefit, is only available to those who became disabled before the age of 22. That is set to change in the future, but right now that's the current rule. Okay, so let's talk about, would you get SSI or SSDI? You will get SSDI if you qualify based on those three things: disability, no income, low assets, and the disabled adult child does not have enough work credits, or they do not have a parent who is deceased, or they do not have a parent who is currently taking their own Social Security. In essence, once a child turns 18, they're probably going to get SSI, unless one of those things is true. Okay, that's going to be the most common one right off the bat, that $943 per month. Conversely, you would get SSDI if you qualify, you're disabled, you don't make enough money, and one of those benefits. If your disabled adult child has worked 40 hours, or 40 work credits, or has a deceased parent, or has a parent who is taking Social Security. Those are the instances in which you would actually switch from SSI to SSDI. This is where I want to spend some time helping you understand how you can figure out what that benefit is going to be for your family. How does SSDI under the disabled adult child, the DAC benefit, work? A disabled adult child will likely receive SSI until his parent takes Social Security or passes away, okay? The second part is that once the parent takes his or her own Social Security, and if there's a dual parent household, it's going to be based off of the parent who made the most money, okay? The SSDI benefit for that disabled adult child is unlocked once mom and dad start taking Social Security. And it's going to pay up to 50% of the parent's benefit while the parent is living. And that does not detract from what the parent gets, okay? The parent will get their benefit. The child will get 50% of it on top of that. When the parent passes away, that SSDI benefit for the disabled adult child will increase to 75% of the parent's benefit, and that's going to last the rest of your disabled adult child benefit life, okay, until they pass away. You're not going to get both SSI and SSDI, you're just going to get the greater of the two. There are instances in which the SSDI, this 50%, is actually less than SSI, in which case SSI will step in and pay the difference to make sure you get at least $943 per month, okay? So let me give you an example with some actual numbers so you can hopefully follow this a little bit better. If the disabled adult child is 40 years old and receiving SSI, and the 40 years old doesn't matter, it can be any age above 18, and is receiving SSI, they are getting $943 per month. Well, now the parent of this child is turning 67, and it doesn't have to be 67. It can be any age between 62 and 70, but we're going to say 67. The parent is 67 and they start taking their own Social Security and they're getting $3,000 per month. Well, that means that that disabled adult child benefit is now unlocked. They are now going to switch, no longer getting SSI, they're now going to get SSDI under that DAC benefit, which is 50%. In other words, 50% of $3,000 is $1,500 a month, which is awesome. That's about a $500 a month raise compared to what they were getting at $943 per month. And that is going to last until mom and dad pass away. When mom and dad passes away, that DAC benefit is going to increase to 75% or $2,250, which is obviously a pretty substantial increase as well. And again, that will last the rest of that child's lifetime. What's nice as well is there will also be increases every year, hopefully, or every few years with inflation. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but this is hugely important. And this is where a lot of confusion starts. And the reason I'm not going to spend time talking about it is because it's different in every single situation. So it'd be too hard to go through it. But let me tell you how you can figure it out. Every single DAC benefit is subject to what's called a family maximum. The family maximum basically says Social Security will pay out a maximum amount of money, and it's different for every single family for that family, meaning the total of mom and dad's Social Security plus whatever the child or multiple children, if you have multiple children's DAC benefit is, cannot exceed that maximum. And if it does, then what's going to happen is they're going to split up everything after the primary parents equally. Okay, let me tell you what that means, and I'll show you an example. This is what you're going to do. This is your challenge. This is the one thing, the first thing that you're going to do. You need to find your numbers because this only makes sense if we find it for you. This is the paper that you're going to look for. Okay, everyone's looks like this. The way you're going to find it is by going to ssa.gov. Literally just type in ssa.gov, and right on the front, you're going to see something that says get a benefits estimate. In fact, let me just show you. You click ssa.gov, you can see right here underneath prepare, it says get a benefits estimate. This is where you're going to go to find this. If you've never signed in, you're going to create an account. If you have signed in, you're going to sign in, okay? Going back to this, what we're looking for here is this really important piece of paper, which outlines how much you, as mom and dad, are going to get for your own Social Security. Typically, your full retirement is either going to be 66 or 67. So these are the monthly numbers that you're looking at. Half of those numbers is what the DAC benefit is going to be for your child once you start taking it. Now, that really important maximum that I mentioned, you can find that here on the bottom line. And I know this is a little bit small, but you'll see it at the bottom. It says total family benefits cannot be more than, and in this example, it's $5,431, which means that the total of mom or dad's benefit plus a spouse benefit plus any kid's benefit cannot exceed that number. And if it does, they're going to take the difference between this number, the primary earning parent's number, and divide the rest up evenly. How do you avoid hitting a family maximum? If it's a dual spouse, it's possible, and if it's possible that the lower earning spouse can work, that's going to help. Okay, I know that's not always possible. I also know that there's not always a dual spouse income, but that is a way to avoid hitting that family maximum and ensuring that your child gets as much money as possible. I hope that made sense. I know that that's a lot of information. I know that that can be a little bit confusing, but this is the first thing that I want you to figure out is find this piece of paper by logging in and start looking at your specific numbers. And this will help you understand exactly what your child is going to get when you pass away, which is a huge start, okay? I'll go through these really quick. On the insurance side, so the other benefits, we just talked about the income side. Now we're talking about the insurance. Once you're approved for SSI, the individual will automatically qualify for Medicaid, which is the healthcare in most states. Some states you still have to apply separately. For example, in Utah, you automatically qualify, but you still have to file a separate application. So it's different state to state, but in general, you're automatically going to qualify. 24 months after moving over to SSDI, the individual will automatically qualify for Medicare. Okay, Medicare is a different healthcare system. Medicare is now going to be the primary health insurance, and Medicaid will fall to secondary, and that's awesome. We want to keep Medicaid there because Medicaid usually serves as a catch-all, meaning anything that is not paid for by Medicare will hopefully be paid for by Medicaid. Obviously, there are some things that Medicaid won't cover, typically vision, dental, but also some other medical things. I said this before, Medicaid is the most important. We need to protect it at all costs. And the last part within the benefits that I'll talk about here is the supports. Supports and state waivers are Medicaid funded, but state specific. And that's why every single state has different programs. I'm going to drop this in the chat as well. If you want to know about all of the waiver programs available in your state, you can go to this website and it outlines you can see there's 626 different waivers in the United States of America. You can filter by the state that you live in. This is such a cool tool. I'm going to drop this in the chat as well for you to be able to use. But it's really awesome just to know what's even available. And then it'll have a description and it usually has a direct link for how to apply. Super important, super helpful, just good to know what's even available to you. The last thing that I'll say here within the benefits or for the supports is that a lot of the Medicaid waivers don't follow the same rules as SSI and Medicaid, meaning they don't always follow mom and dad's asset and income, specifically if the child is a minor. Sometimes they go off of the minor's assets and income, which is usually zero, which means they may qualify even if you, as mom and dad, make too much or have too much in assets, okay? So here's the take action for this part, and then we're going to go on to the next two. Go to ssa.gov, get that benefits estimate, and begin looking at your personal numbers. The younger you are, the less accurate this is going to be because presumably you're going to keep working and earning more, and that number is going to get bigger and bigger. But this is the most crucial part. Anytime I go through this planning process with my clients, this is one of the first things that we look at. And so this is your action item, your first action item. If there's one thing you can do, it's go and download this statement. I'm going to pause here before we go on to the next section. Are there any questions that anyone has about anything we've talked about so far? You're welcome to drop it in the chat, or you're welcome to come off of mute and ask your question. And if not, then we'll just keep going. Hey, all right.
Tanner, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it, Carrie.
When you were explaining like the family maximum, what happens if so you're saying just, for example, there's two spouses, the primary spouse, the caregiver that did not have a work history, and the child that gets SSDI. What happens if that primary person passes away? Do they now split that maximum, or are we still within those the DAC or whatever, I can't remember the letters you benefit?
Yeah, good question. And Carrie, all the credit goes to you, by the way, on this, because you asked this question in a previous workshop. And so I went and spent hours with Social Security saying, tell me how this works. To answer that question, let me go back to this right here. So this is that statement. What you'll notice here is on the bottom, this bottom box says survivor benefits. This basically means that if the primary earner passes away, here's what is going to be earned or received. So the first one is if there's a minor child, it's going to say they're going to get this much money. If there's a spouse and that spouse is caring for a disabled child or minor children, they're going to get this much money. And then if there's also a spouse and they wait all the way until retirement age, they're going to get this much money. The short answer of it is, well, there's not a short way to say this. Let me explain this as well as I can because it is a little bit confusing. As the surviving spouse, you will inherit one of these options, right? One of these specified options is what you will get. At a minimum, you will also get half of whatever your spouse earned. That's the minimum that you'll typically get. But to your point, yes, the leftover benefit for the spouse and the child or children will have to be split if it reaches the maximum. Where it changes is even if the spouse worked a little bit, right? Maybe, for example, if we use that same $3,000 example, well, the spouse, maybe they worked a little bit, and so their benefit was $1,000. But 1,000 is obviously less than half of the primary earners, which would be 1,500. That $1,000 actually counts towards the family household, meaning that's not included. And I know that's a little bit confusing what I'm saying there, but the short of it is the most that a spouse can, the most that a spouse can work, that's going to help make it so that you don't reach the family maximum as quickly, meaning everyone's going to get more money. I don't know if that made any sort of sense there. But the
Yes.
short of it is yes, you're going to split all of it, and it'll.
So the family maximum is not on that one person. It could be a combined amount
Correct.
between the two families. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. There's a couple of questions in the chat here. Jenna Lee said, "I have twins with SSI. Would theirs be split?" No. So, well, maybe. If they're 18 or older, they are their own person. So if they are 18 or older, each of them is going to get their own SSI amount, and which should be the full amount. If they're under 18, that's where you're going to want to go to that website that will help you understand what, if anything, you qualify for SSI. Now, if it's SSDI, right, meaning that, again, they're twins, they are going to be factored into this family maximum, which means it may have to be split if you reach that family maximum. Deborah, yes, I'm confused as to having lower paid spouse to keep working for family maximum. Yeah, so let me see if I can explain this a little bit more clearly. If the primary earning spouse has a benefit of $3,000, and let's say that the lower earning spouse, their benefit was only going to be 1,000. Well, when it comes to their retirement, the lower earning spouse is going to have the option to either use their own benefit of 1,000 or half of their spouse's, which was 1,500, right? Because they earned 3,000, so half is 1,500. Well, they're obviously going to take the 1,500 because it's more. However, only the difference of what they actually earned, that 1,000 and the 1,500, which is their spouse's, that difference is $500. Only that difference of 500 counts toward the family maximum. And that's why I say it makes such a difference if the lower earning spouse has anything, even if it's not substantial, anything that they earn throughout their lifetime is going to reduce the amount that has to be used from the family maximum. Hopefully that makes a little bit of some sense there. It kind of makes more sense when you use numbers, I feel like.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Thank you. At some point, can you explain how an 529 ABLE? Yes, that's exactly where we're going next season. So that is our next section. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay, I think we've got the questions. So let's go on here. Thank you for the questions and keep them coming, and feel free to drop them in the chat if you don't want to forget. So here's our next section. Here's the whiplash. Protecting the public benefits, right? So the first thing we said is get your benefit and understand what it's going to be. The second one is protect it. And specifically, we're going to talk about an ABLE account in a special needs trust. So I'm going to use another poll here. Here, let's launch it. If you'll please complete it. Do you have a special needs trust already? Options are yes, but it doesn't have any money in it. It's unfunded. Yes, and you are funding, or it is funded, or no. Just take a couple minutes and drop in your answer here. Okay. All right, we've got most of you in here. So here's how it's breaking down. 20% have a special needs trust, but it is not funded. 7%, which I think is just one of you, has a special needs trust and you are currently funding it, or it is funded already. And then the majority, 73%, do not have one. That's what I expected. For the one who is funding it already or has funded it, you're awesome. You're amazing. That's a hard thing to do. And so kudos to you for doing that already. I'm going to end the poll and let's go on here. Let's talk about this. Again, this is now protecting the benefits. So we did all of the hard work of understanding the income and the healthcare and the supports. Now we've got to protect it. I started with this phrase here: disability and special needs planning is taking advantage of all publicly available benefits, ... The second half of that sentence is, while never becoming entirely dependent on them to the extent possible. And I realize that that's not always possible for all of us. The reason that we obviously want to avoid being dependent on them is they can go away, right? Some of you may have heard that Social Security is going away. Well, it's not going away, but it is going to be reduced, and that's going to affect us. And these waiver programs, it's all about funding, right? And that's why organizations like United Angels does so much good work to advocate for our families to say, no, we need these programs, okay? So yes, while they're there, we're going to use them, but please don't depend on them, meaning this is all only going to work if you get it. That's what we want to build on. So in order to avoid dependence on these benefits, we have to make these benefits supplemental to our own savings. And you've also probably heard me say this before as well, if you followed along. Disability and special needs planning is like saving for 2 retirements. Yes, we are the lucky ones who get to do it twice. The first retirement is our own, as mom and dad or caregiver or whoever we are. The second is the life of our child after we are gone. It's expensive to do this once, much less twice, but we've got to do the best we can. Here's how we're going to approach this. How do you save for the second retirement when there's a limit of $2,000 before your child loses all of their benefits? That's the conundrum, right? Well, there actually is a way, and they're the 2 vehicles that every single special needs parent hears about, which is an ABLE account and a special needs trust. What are they? What are the differences? We're going to do a quick overview because some of you probably already know some of this, but I want to specifically talk about what you can do to take action and change your plan. Let's first do a quick overview of what an ABLE account is. In short, an ABLE account, and it's an acronym, that's why it's all capitalized. I think it stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. Not important, just call it an ABLE account. But it's a tax-advantaged account that allows an individual with a disability to save above that $2,000 limit without losing those benefits like SSI, Medicaid, those types of things. I like to think of an ABLE account as a checking account for the person with a disability, meaning, how do you and I use a checking account? Well, I use my checking account to deposit my income and also to pay my bills. Same thing for a loved one with a disability who has an ABLE account. They can deposit their income, whether working or whether just SSI or SSDI, and then they can also pay their bills from an ABLE account. And we're going to talk about that. I will also emphasize this is meant to be a cash flow account, not a primary savings account. I'll also throw out here at the bottom, as you can see, this is not a place to hide income. So I talk to families all the time who say, Tanner, we make just barely too much. We just barely make too much, and so we're not going to get our benefits. Can we put, some of our income in an ABLE account or a special needs trust? No, you cannot. Or I should say you can, but it's not going to help your cause, unfortunately. This is not a place to put income. It's just a place to help with the asset limit. Let's keep talking about some of the features of an ABLE account. It can be opened at any age and in any state, but some states actually don't have an ABLE program. The most common is Idaho in proximity. Idaho does not have an ABLE program. There are some other states that don't have an ABLE program. You can use another state's. Most people in Idaho use Oregon's plan, for example, just because it's right there. And Oregon has a plan that allows anybody in all 50 states to use it. But you can use it at any time in any state. There's a contribution limit of $18,000 a year, and that typically goes up every year, but currently it's $18,000 a year. Anybody can put money inside of an ABLE account. If the person with a disability, the account owner, is working and they're not putting money into a retirement plan, they can put an additional $14,580 in, or just the maximum amount of whatever they're earning if it's less than that. So you can put some decent money in here. The funds can also be invested. So there are investment components, or you can choose to leave it in cash, and the money is going to grow tax-free, which is awesome. Whoops, we gotta go forward. The withdrawals, so the money that you take out, they can be used to pay for what we call qualified expenses. And I'll talk about what those qualified expenses are. Think about it this way. When you get SSI and SSDI, the government is saying, we will give you this money, but it needs to be used to pay for food and shelter. Those are the basic living expenses, which means that anything else outside of that is what Enable account can be used for. And technically, you can still use it for food and shelter, but we need to use SSI money for that first. What I love about Enable account is it is the most lenient vehicle for spending. The current rule, word for word, is anything that helps to maintain or improve health, independence, or quality of life. That can be a lot of things, okay? So that's the short of what you can use Enable account to pay for. I also love it because it gives autonomy to the individual to learn how to use money and to spend while giving oversight to a parent or guardian, okay? It's a cool way to, not have to worry as mom and dad that they're going to go blow all their money in one spot, which is sometimes a concern. A couple considerations. Some people may call this the bad side of Enable account. I'm just going to call it a consideration. Once the account reaches more than $100,000, SSI will stop paying. If you're receiving SSI and it gets to $100,000, not going to get it anymore. Now, Medicaid is unaffected. Medicaid's fine. You're still going to get it. But SSI will stop until it comes back below 100,000. So the simple way is if you get above 100,000, go buy something and then get back down underneath 100,000 and SSI will start paying again. There's also a total account balance limit. It's different state to state, but it's usually around $500,000. Most people never get there, but that is something to know as well. The big thing that most people have heard about with Enable account and why they're maybe concerned about it is this. Any money in Enable account after the account owner dies, after the person with a disability passes away, is subject to Medicaid clawback, meaning Medicaid gets first dibs. And if you've been on Medicaid services for a while, they're probably going to take all of it. Honestly, it's not the worst thing in the world. They are paying for a lot of services, and so I understand why they take the money back. But if you don't want to have a substantial amount of money just gone, that's why we don't want to have a ton of money in Enable account. And that's why I like to think about it as more of a cash flow, money in, money out, instead of a place to put a ton of money. Because it's just, that's kind of the main downside here. Enable account pays for things that SSI and SSDI do not. Okay, so all of those things outside of that. Let's talk a little bit about a special needs trust. So we've talked a little bit about Enable, quick overview of what that is. A special needs trust is a type of irrevocable trust that allows a beneficiary to inherit assets without affecting their benefits, right? We're preserving that. There are two types of special needs trusts. First party. A first party trust means that the only person who's putting money in that account is the person with a disability. Usually that comes from a settlement, malpractice, an oops inheritance, meaning they received money that they shouldn't have, and then some cases child support as well. The most common type of special needs trust is a third-party trust, and this is funded by anybody except the person with a disability. So typically, if mom and dad are setting up a special needs trust, they are using a third-party trust. I like to think of a special needs trust as a savings account. If the ABLE account is a checking, then this is a savings account. How do you and I use a savings account? That's where we hold the majority of our money. And also, we use it to replenish the ABLE account as needed. Okay, so we can send money from a special needs trust to an ABLE, but not from an ABLE to a special needs trust. Here are just a couple of quick features of a special needs trust. It can be opened at any age in any state. There's no contribution limit. So you can put as much money in there as you want. You can hold all different types of assets as well. An ABLE account only holds cash. Special needs trust can have cash, investments, real estate, all sorts of different types of things. The money can also be invested, and it's taxed at either the trust tax rate or the beneficiary's tax rate. And withdrawals must be used for qualified expenses. One of the drawbacks, and we'll talk about this, of a special needs trust is they're a lot more strict on what the money can be used for. Again, it's expenses that are not covered by SSDI and SSI. That's what a special needs trust needs to be used for. So let's talk about some of those considerations. Again, they're a lot more stringent, and I'll kind of outline what that means. You also have to file taxes on a trust every year. And so there's a balance between when should you actually start funding a trust, because you're going to have to file taxes on the amount of money that it produces. The trustee job, which is the person who's in charge of a special needs trust, is also a very big job. Okay. They have to find a bank. They have to find someone to invest the money. They're in charge of taking all of the distribution requests. It's a full-time job. And if you've got a life and a lot of things going on, that can be a hard thing to do. Any of you who may be trustees right now, you can probably agree with me on this. They have to keep track of all the expenses as well, of everything that's coming out, and keep track of all of the laws. So those are just some of the things to keep in mind with a special needs trust. So let's talk about using an ABLE account and a special needs trust together. How do we use them? What do we need to know? Again, use an ABLE account like you would a checking account, meaning put money in, pay your bills, but don't try and save a ton of money in there. Use a special needs trust for everything else, right? Everything else, life insurance, retirement accounts, property, real estate, anything like that is going to go to the special needs trust. That's the inheritance. I also, this is just kind of a cool little rule of thumb. I like to take $18,000 a year from the special needs trust and move it over to the ABLE account. Why? $18,000, the maximum amount of money that can go in an ABLE account, but also the ABLE account is a lot more lenient on what the money can be used for. A special needs trust is a lot more strict. Okay, now this is very confusing, and I'm going to go through this quickly. I know that we're coming up on time here. Hang with me, and hopefully this will make some sense. Let's only look at the left side here. This is how money goes in to an ABLE account. The ABLE account is in the center. We can deposit SSI and SSDI. We can deposit job income that they receive. Someone asked about a 529 earlier. You can actually convert a 529 that you set up for your child into an ABLE account, 18,000 bucks a year. That's that number. And then any small cash gifts, grandma and grandpas, aunts and uncles, anyone who just says, hey, here's some money, we can put that money inside of an ABLE account. And again, this can come from anybody, okay? Now let's talk about how things look for a trust. This is an example, not the only example, but this is how it might work in your family. If you're thinking about how to leave money to your child with a special needs trust, this is how you might think about it. In this scenario, we're going to say that we have two parents. We have parent one, parent two. If parent one or parent two passes away, they're probably going to leave whatever they own to the other parent. When they both pass away, ideally, it would all go to a family trust. And that family trust receives everything. The investments, the life insurance, the property, all of that stuff. The family trust then says, we are going to pay out to whoever the beneficiaries are. So if you have other children outside of your child with a disability, it can pay out directly to them if you'd like. But the child with a disability, it must pay out to their third-party special needs trust. And then the third-party special needs trust pays out to the child. And that's how we avoid this affecting their benefits, okay? Hopefully this is just kind of a simple little visual here to understand how things flow. The second part that I'll show you is money out. So this was money in. Now let's talk about money out. On the left side here, we have an ABLE account. I know this is a lot to look at. Hang with me. An ABLE account can pay for anything that benefits your child. Transportation, BYU football season tickets, which is a really important expense. It should be budgeted every single year without question. Medications, the gym, basic living expenses, all of that stuff. SSI and SSDI pay for housing and food. Okay, so we really want to use that money for these expenses first. A special needs trust, on the other hand, what is that going to pay for? It's going to pay for everything that SSI and SSDI does not pay for. And here's a couple examples: vacations, medical expenses, education, vehicle, therapies. Now, something I want to point out. Most special needs trusts do not pay cash to the individual with a disability, because now there's a problem, right? Now they have more than $2,000. What most special needs trusts do is they actually pay these expenses directly. So they're going to send the vacation cost directly to the vacation. They're going to send tuition directly to the school. They're going to buy the vehicle directly. They're not giving it to the child. The trustee's job is to make sure it goes directly to these institutions. So you're usually not taking out cash. Most special needs trusts will not let you do that, okay? Just an important understanding of how that works. So to round this out here, when and how do we get a special needs trust? I feel like this is an important thing to understand. There are two options for when to get a special needs trust. The first is you create a special needs trust now, and we sometimes call that standalone. Essentially, it's a really expensive piece of paper that's going to sit in your drawer. That's all it is. You can also choose to fund it now, right? And that's why we ask that question of, are you putting money into it right now? The second you turn it on and you start putting money into it, it now exists, right? Before that, it's just a nice expensive piece of paper that you paid a bunch of money to an attorney for, which is really important. I'm not discounting it, but that's all it is. The other option is you set up a special needs trust later. And this is what is sometimes called testamentary. And what this means is that you write into your will or your family trust something along the lines of, a special needs trust will be created for the benefit of your child when you pass away. You're not setting it up now, but when you pass away, whoever you decide is going to be the trustee, they have to go out then and set up the special needs trust at that point. It doesn't exist until you pass away. This is a safeguard. Okay, we at a minimum have to make sure that we have this. It's recommended to set it up now because then it's already done, but at a minimum, we have to have this testamentary language. Okay. Quick note on dividing your estate. It's more important to be equitable than equal. This is a really hard conversation to have when you have other children outside of your child with a disability. Equitable means equal in proportion to the need. And it's probably likely that your child with a disability has greater needs. And so therefore, potentially likely that you're going to need to give them a larger and sometimes all of the estate, just if we're being real here. I'll throw this out as well. Please do not leave money to your child with a disability to anybody else. Meaning if it's intended to take care of your child, don't give it to their sibling, don't give it to an aunt or uncle. And here's why. The obvious is they could just decide not to use it, right? They could just say, we're not going to take care of the child, which I hope obviously doesn't happen. They could also get a divorce, right? If they get a divorce, now this money could potentially be on the table. They might get into a lawsuit. Now this money's on the table. They might pass away, which means the money that was supposed to go to your child with a disability is now going to the siblings' heirs. There's too many reasons. There's too many risks. Please don't ever think, oh, well, I'll just leave the money to the other sibling and they'll take care of them. Don't do it. You can name them as a trustee, but you have to put it in a special needs trust. That's how we avoid this, okay? That's my soapbox. I'll get off it here. Here's the take action, and then we're going to wrap up with one more thing. If there's one thing you can do, number one, open an Able account. And here, I'll drop this link in the chat as well. Go to this website, click on your state, and it'll tell you exactly how to apply for an Able in your state. It's really easy. It's all online. You can do it in less than 5 minutes. The second action is if you don't already have a special needs trust, get testamentary language in your will or in your family trust. Go to your attorney. I have a list of attorneys that I've vetted in most states that I'm happy to share with you and say, I need a special needs trust created testamentary. Why would you do that way? It's cheaper. If money's tight and you just need to say, hey, I need to have, some extra money, this is the best way to do it. It'll protect you in case something happens. This is like the worst case scenario. You pass away, you didn't get everything set up, but you'll at least make sure your child is okay. I also would recommend checking out this company, Visible National Trust. They are changing the way that families set up special needs trusts. It's significantly more cost effective, and I think it's just outright better. So take a look at Visible National Trust. If you do already have a special needs trust, think about funding it. Because again, it's just a fancy piece of paper in your desk. Even if you've already set it up, if there's not money in it, it technically doesn't exist yet. So think about starting to fund it, but keep in mind that a special needs trust is irrevocable, meaning the second you put money in there, it does not come back out. And so please don't put money in that you can't get back. Identify which one of these is the most important for you and please take action on it. It'll change your family's life and your family's plan. Due to time, I'm going to go through this next one really quick. The last part is protecting your child's care. There's the third thing that you can do. It's going to be creating the playbook. A will, a trust, and a special needs trust outline what happens to your assets, but what outlines what happens to your child? Who actually takes care of them and what do they need to know? The LOI, you may have heard it called, is the letter of intent. I like to call it the playbook. Again, it outlines everything that someone needs to know about stepping in to take care of your child. It's going to include information such as information about your child, information about medical and health history, government benefit information that they're receiving, family information about who's involved in their life, and the next generation wishes. I'm going to fly through this, so I apologize, but again, we're going to have a recording of this, but just due to time here. Child information is going to include things like personal care, daily routines, personality traits, their likes and dislikes, medical and history. This one's pretty straightforward. Health and medical history, their diagnosis and prognosis. Write it down. You know, maybe it's assumed if they have Down syndrome, you know, but write it down. It's important for the next person to come in and see any information they need or help that they need with ADLs, medications that they're on, allergies that they have, dietary restrictions and preferences, medical team, right? Who are their doctors, and medical insurance. Benefit information includes everything we've talked about: income, medical, and support. Housing benefits, if they have Section 8 housing or low-income housing. Any programs they're affiliated with, any nonprofits they're affiliated with. If they're with United Angels, make sure you put it on there because United Angels can provide a lot of support. If there's caregiver compensation, make sure you write it down. Any family information, sibling relationships is huge. Sometimes the next caregiver might not understand that there's a strain between siblings, and that's just a very real thing, and it's important to know. Extended family relationships, maybe people that you do or don't want involved in your child's life. Contact information for all of these people. Who should be authorized to be a part of your child's life. Legal documents and where to find them. And then finally, the next generation of care. What's your vision for your child? What do you want for your child if you can't be the one to do it anymore? What are some major milestones that you want to make sure are celebrated? What about housing? Where do you want them to live? Share this information with your circle. Okay, I always encourage a family meeting. Help people in your circle understand what you've done. This is a lot of work to do. Keep physical and digital copies and give copies to your professional team, whether that's your special needs planner, your attorney, your tax professional, etc. Make sure everyone has a copy. This is the last action item. If there's the third thing that you can do, it's begin documenting these things. I have a template that I use for all of my clients, and I am happy to give it to anyone who wants it. It'll outline everything that you should be including in there, plus it'll give you space to include things that maybe weren't thought of. If you want this, please let me know. I'll be happy to give it to you for free, and you can use this and you can start filling this out. But if we review this, you know, again, just in review, what was the goal here? We wanted to keep things simple. I know we went through a ton. The goal is not to make you feel overwhelmed. I just wanted to make sure you were educated. But if there's only 3 things you can do walking away from this meeting, get your benefits, and specifically get that piece of paper that says how much money your child is going to get when you take Social Security and when you pass away. Do that. Number 2, protect your benefits by making sure that you at least at a minimum write into your will or trust that a special needs trust will be created. That will protect them at a minimum. It's the most cost-effective thing you can possibly do. And then finally, protect your child's care by starting to fill out this playbook. Okay. Those are the 3 things. I promise that if you focus just on those 3 things, it'll drastically change your life and the vision of your family for the future. By focusing on the 1, 2, 3s, your child is going to be protected, which is a relief, but that's not enough. From here, we want to make sure that they thrive. When you're ready for it and you've got these 3 things taken care of, then let's put together a plan that makes sure that not only do they just have the bare minimum that they're protected, but that they're going to have the best possible life that they can. The last thing that I'll end on is you're not alone. You can do this. I know it's overwhelming, but at a minimum, I'm here. Sylvia's here. Carrie's here. United Angels is here. We want to help. And so if you need help, please feel free to reach out. We are here to help you figure out what you need to do. I'll leave this here as just a quick way to get in touch with me. If any of you have questions, if you want to schedule time with me, I think that's what that QR code does if you scan it. It'll take you to my calendar and some of the other resources that we have. My website's there, my email's there, my phone number's there. I'm actually not in Provo anymore. I'm in Mapleton. We just moved offices. But feel free to reach out to me at any time. I will meet with anyone for free. I do not charge anything for our initial conversations if you just want to kind of brainstorm and think through some things here. So we'll end on this. Actually, I'll pause. Sylvia and Carrie, I know we're like over time here, and that's because I talk way too much. Are we okay on time if we go through some questions? Okay. I'm going to unshare so I can see things a little better. And then let me pull up the question list here. I know some questions came in as we went through here. So, Carrie, I think this was the last one. I've heard that some states do not have the clawback. Have you heard that? I have not. From my understanding, anybody that is receiving Medicaid services, because it's a federal program adopted on a state level, would be subject to some sort of clawback if there's anything in an ABLE account or a first party special needs trust. So I'd have to look into that. That would be interesting to know. But for the most part, I think pretty much all of them do. Season. So would an inheritance go into an ABLE or a special needs trust? Yeah, great question. Special needs trust. Anything that you want to leave after you're gone is going to go in a special needs trust. An ABLE account is just income or little gifts along the way. That's all you're going to put inside of an ABLE account. Same question. What about a supplemental special needs trust? Are they different or the same? Also a really good question. So a special needs trust is actually the street name of a supplemental needs trust. A supplemental needs trust is the legal term of a special needs trust. So those are going to be the same. If you hear them, it means the same thing. Okay, generally, my interview, or let's see, I'm assuming that means in-laws. My in-laws have a family trust with a special needs trust set up. This will go to my husband, then my disabled twins. My brother-in-law is over it. We have no access to it. Is this correct to not have access? We have to ask for the money. I want to make sure I understand the situation here. So the in-laws set up a special needs trust, I'm assuming for your disabled twins. Is that right? I just saw you came off mute.
That's correct. So my husband actually has a disability too, but he's not on anything because he's able to work. But they set it up initially because he was disabled, but now we need it because our twins are disabled.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So is the special needs trust though for the benefit of the twins specifically?
So it's written in the will that that money will be Ryan's, my husband's, and then any of his children's. I don't do any of it.
So it sounds like this special needs trust hasn't actually been created yet. It's just in the will that says one will be created. Does that sound right?
No, they have money in it.
Oh, they have money in it. Okay. Okay, yeah. So what I think then, based on what you've shared, is the special needs trust first and foremost is for the benefit of your husband. And then if he passes away, the remainder amount would go to the twins. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So being that is the case, again, a special needs trust is irrevocable, which means it can't be changed. And once the money's in there, it can't come back out. There's a couple parties involved with a special needs trust. The grantor or the settlor is the person who set it up. So that's likely your in-laws, right? They're the ones who set it up. They're the ones who put money into it. The beneficiary is your husband, and then eventually your two twins. I don't know who the trustee is, but the trustee is the one who's in charge of that trust.
That's my brother-in-law.
What's that?
My brother-in-law is over the money.
So he's in charge of it. So you're right. Technically you won't necessarily have access to it because it's the trustee's job. They're the ones who have access to it. Yeah.
And is that right that legally, like my husband couldn't be the trustee? Right. Is that right?
Yeah, you can't be the trustee and the beneficiary.
Okay.
Yep,
that's what I was.
That's how we avoid it affecting public benefits is by the beneficiary. Literally all they do is they're the ones who get to receive the money, use the money.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Really good question. Yeah. Okay. Someone asked for the LOI playbook. Yep, I'll just go ahead and send it out to everyone who registered, just so you have it, and you're welcome to use it if you like. And if you don't, then that's okay. Okay, I think those were the questions in the chat. Does anyone else have any questions that they want to throw in the chat or come off of mute and ask? When can we get a replay? Yep, as soon as it uploads to the cloud, I'll go ahead and include it. So I'll send an email to everyone with the playbook and with the recording so you have access to it, and that should take care of that. So any other questions before we hop off here? Thanks for all of you, being here, and hopefully this was good information and hopefully not too overwhelming. I know it's a lot of information, but hopefully it's just good actionable information.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So, dang it, I just forgot it. Never mind.
If it comes back up, let me know.
Well, Tanner, thank you so much. It's obvious this is the passion of your heart. We appreciate all that you do for United Angels and the support that you give us. I personally have sat in on a lot of different financial webinars, and I'm excited with the information that you've given me. I love the points of action that you've given us, and I hope that I can take all the research that you've done for us and make the best for my daughter. But thank you, Tanner, and we'll look forward to the recording.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
Carrie.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, I remember. Do you have just a second?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
happy to hang on here. I'll hang on. I think Carrie and Sylvia, you guys are good to take off, but I'm happy to hang on for anyone who has questions.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm in Idaho.
Yeah.
So I can't get an ABLE account, but I can get one in Oregon.
Yeah, so Idaho just doesn't have an ABLE program for their state. They're always state administered, and for whatever reason, Idaho just has not hopped on that wagon yet, and it's crazy. But yeah, so you can just use another state that allows non-residents, and most people in Idaho use Oregon's. It's called ABLE for All. In fact, let me drop it in the chat for you so you can find it. ABLE for All. But it's all of this. What's nice is you can just go online and set these things up. Let me drop this in the chat. Okay, so that link, whoops, I sent that direct. There we go. Okay, so I just dropped that in, but yeah, in Idaho, go to, I mean, honestly, again, you can use any of the states that allow it. And that link that I sent earlier that would help you pick which state to choose, that'll help you nail it down. If you click on Idaho, it's going to tell you there's not a program. But I like Oregon's. They do a really good job.
Okay. And then what is your role? Like what is your company? Because I'm all about the who, not how, right? Like these are things that I just don't want to deal with. So I know, I mean, I've been researching a lot about them, but I don't want to do them. So what is your role in, like, are you someone where we just kind of go, this is what I want, can you make this happen? Like, how do we?
Yeah, great question. Yep. So we built this to support parents because I'm a parent, right? Just like anybody else. And so our role is to say we will focus on the planning, specifically the financial, the investments, the benefits, the estate, and the family support. And so our vision is we want to create, for the families who want to work with us professionally, we want to create a long-term partnership where we are here to help you through that process from wherever you're at now all the way through to, ideally to your child's life without you. And so we'll help you put up or set in place the plan that makes sure all of that happens according to the way that you want it.
Okay, and so you're not state specific, you're just anywhere, right?
All 50 states, yeah, but not internationally because their rules are different. So like Canada is just has totally different rules, but any of the 50 states we work in.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I know that Sylvia just kept, she's on here because she's the co-host and she didn't want to mess anything up, but she's on a call.
Okay, that's
and
okay.
Then I need to talk to you, Tanner, but I don't know if you want me to call you or just stick around. I don't know.
I mean, we're recorded right now, so if you don't want to go specifics, then,
No, I'll talk to you separately, but yeah, I'll call you. But okay, awesome.
Right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just have to wait till everyone logs off. Thank you.
There we go. I will unrecord.